Hello, everyone. Dr. Stillman and Jim Laird here today to talk about the hidden truth about semaglutide. Jim, good to see you today. Jim is in Nicaragua, where it's hot and muggy, as it always is this time of season.
It's not hot. It's muggy, but it's actually been in the 70s here the last couple days. It's just different. It's totally different. It's wintertime here. So
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in
Yes,
this
thank you for
morning.
joining us, everyone. So today, semaglutide. Semaglutide has definitely been a thing for at least a year now. I remember when we were in the gym together back in Tampa, St. Pete, we would we were hearing about it on podcasts and we were seeing ads for it. And Jim and I both sort of rolled our eyes and said, okay, this is not going to end well for a lot of people who are using it because they don't want or know the truth about a lot of the traditional and conventional tactics for losing weight. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place. I've got lots of colleagues who are using it. They are raving about it. They're very happy with it. We'll talk more about responsible use later today. But the reality that I think semaglutide is it really illustrates is that number one, most people don't understand fundamentally how to lose weight. And number two, most of them don't know or want to go somewhere to really learn the skill of controlling their body composition. And the problem with this is that losing weight is a incredibly dangerous thing to do because depending on what kind of weight you actually lose, you can dramatically shorten your lifespan and ruin your quality of life. What do I mean by that? People get fixated on losing weight, which is a massive mistake. Most people don't want to lose weight. They want to transform fat into air and water, CO2 and H2O, which is what happens when you combust fuel from your body like fat. And they want to add muscle and bone mass. What makes young, attractive people look young and attractive isn't the number that the scale reads when they get on it. It is how they look. And how they look has everything to do with where their muscle is, where their fat stores are, how strong their bones are part and parcel of that. They're inseparable. You can't have good body composition without having good bone mass unless you do something really weird with hormones. And so what people really want is to gain muscle and bone mass, which protects you long term from aging, death, disease, disability, keeps you healthy, keeps you feeling good, keeps you performing well. They want to gain those things and they want to lose fat mass. And from everything we've learned about semaglutide since it came out, particularly at high doses without proper diet and lifestyle changes, and even with proper diet and lifestyle changes, people don't just lose fat with semaglutide and any of the other similar agents. They actually lose bone and muscle mass, and this has been a disaster for many of them. I've seen this personally in my practice with friends and family. They don't realize that they're using a shortcut that is setting them up for long-term grief because they'll lose the weight and they'll look better and they'll feel better about themselves. But then what will happen is they'll end up with a cascade of medical issues that comes about because they lost muscle and bone. And then oftentimes they're also going to struggle with keeping the weight off, which is, of course, one of the things that people struggle with most, no matter what they're trying to do to change their body composition. So that's my opening rant. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, this stuff's been around since like 2005, right? And
Mm,
we've created this world. It was if you go back 100, 200 years ago, it was very difficult to get fat. I mean, you really had to work hard. Traditionally, the environment we've evolved in, or whatever you want to call it, some people would say spontaneously combusted in. Other people would say, immaculate, intelligent design. Whatever you want to believe is up to you. We have this world where it was incredibly difficult to be fat, just incredibly difficult. Now,
incredibly.
Now in the world we're in, it's incredibly difficult to be lean because everyone's circadian rhythm is trash, right? And the food companies basically design food that just makes you eat more and more and more. Like you can't stop eating. So we have in the past, we literally didn't have enough calories available. So you would eat whatever you could. And you had to work your ass off essentially to survive, building shelter. You had to go out. Like the amount of manual labor people do here just to make it every day is crazy, right? It's low level stuff. They're having to cut wood for their, a lot of people still here cook with a clay oven. So they're cooking they're cutting their wood. They got people with cows in their backyard and they're having to go out and cut all the grass and the hay for the cows and bring it to the cows to feed them. So they're constantly doing all this low level activity. So we've created this world where it's incredibly easy to get fat because you don't have to do anything. The food is brought to you. You can't stop eating the food. Your circadian rhythm is smashed, so you're addicted to all this stuff and you can't stop. So instead of saying, well, maybe we need to look at the way our world is designed and our environment that we're living in, we're just going to take something that's going to override all of it, right? We're going to
Right.
take something that's going to slow your gastric, and it's going to suppress your appetite. And not only that, it's going to increase the amount of insulin you produce. And guess what? You're already insulin resistant. So it's just turning the volume up on that stereo. So I know have a lot of friends that use it in their practice with great results, but there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. But now you're seeing trizapatide and semaglutide and all these different peptides being advertised on Groupon. So people are
Wow.
like, I want to lose 15 pounds. So I'm just going to go to, I'm going to go to this clinic and they just give them, they give them the injections and there's no lifestyle change. There's no, weightlifting. There's no, none of that stuff. It's just, and for somebody who's more like, you got to weigh the, like, I'm very cautious to say like this should never be used. It's like knee surgery or back surgery because a couple people die from it or have bad side effects. Does it mean you should never do knee or back surgery? Is knee and back surgery probably overprescribed? I would argue yes.
Yes.
It's okay. But just because a couple people died and a couple people had bad results for the knee and back surgery because orthopedic surgeons, that's how they make their money, and they really want to pull the trigger on that. That's doesn't mean we write off all knee and back surgery. But there's a lot of people that are using this stuff as a quick fix, and it does not end well for those people. And there's a lot of people just giving it out. And you could say the same thing about TRT. If you give somebody testosterone replacement or hormone replacement without lifestyle change, you're setting them up for disaster down the road, right? So
Jim, I'm
um,
actually
we
really
can
curious to get more of your thoughts on because you trained people, right? And people would come to you after a hip,
yeah,
knee, shoulder. When you say that
sure.
they're over operating, what kind of things would you see showing up in the gym post procedure that led you to this belief?
Well, the statistics of the number of people that have good results off back surgery is absolutely nuts.
It
Like
is.
there are actually people now, doctors that will say we are not going to image your back
Mhm.
because all of a sudden, like if you don't have pain and we find something in there, the fact that you've got this disc that's not causing you pain right now, but now I come to you with this image and say, oh, you've got a bulging disc. Well, all of a sudden you've got pain like 2 weeks later, right?
That I don't even think is that controversial, but I'm really curious, did you see this
Right.
happening with, knees or shoulders
Oh,
or
I've seen tons of people with shoulder issue. Well, not only that, so they had a knee replacement, they had a hip replacement, they had a shoulder replacement, and they don't change the strategy that got them into that problem.
Mhm.
Like just because you replace the joint doesn't mean that you've solved the problem. Like if you've got a bent frame on your car and you replace the tie rod and the suspension and the tire because it keeps wearing out, the frame is the problem. It's not the tire, the tie rod, and all that. That stuff's going to keep wearing out. So people that don't address the strategy, particularly harsh compression strategies, where you're
Mhm.
compressing really hard and you can't shut it off, you're just going to end up destroying that joint that was replaced. You
Right.
know, so
And we see that
so it's it's
happening,
it's
yeah, in the medical practice all the time with people who say
right.
things like, "Well, I don't understand why I'm so tired and fatigued." We look at their diet, they
Right.
have no, as just an example, potassium. Well, okay, you're
Right.
not eating any potassium. Potassium is necessary for cellular energy production. It's necessary for water to be in the cells for
Yeah.
intracellular hydration. This is not a mystery. No one's looked at
Right.
this. And so they'd end up on all kinds of sometimes performance enhancing drugs or high doses of hormones, which there's nothing wrong with any of these tools, right? These are
Right.
just tools. Just like if you blow out your tire because something's wrong with, I don't know, whatever you said, tire, axle, bent frame, whatever. If you blow that out, it doesn't mean the tire's bad. It just means that you're running it too hard in a way it wasn't designed to be run. And that's the
Well,
same thing with
the
semaglutide.
tire's wearing out faster, just like if your knee is wearing out faster than it's supposed to.
Mhm.
There's something going on up the chain that's causing that wear on that knee,
Right,
right?
which
And
is why yeah,
most people and what happens is you'll see people like the amount of compression force, like you'll see somebody that actually has bent bones, like you'll see their leg is bow-legged, how much
yeah,
compression, and you can actually reverse that over time. Just like bunions and things like that. Someone has a bunion in their foot, they don't understand that that's from a massive amount of compression. But to
I've
go
seen that
back to the
happen.
GLPs, oh, for sure. To go back to the GLPs, let's talk about the people that are using it, what they are doing right. Just like we could correlate this with testosterone replacement therapy. The people that are using hormone replacement and these things as a tool, one, they're making sure that the person's going to be compliant with dietary change, circadian rhythm change. They're making sure all these things are in order. They're getting enough protein, they're lifting weights. Most of these people are supplementing with vitamin B, leucine, things like this to help them maintain muscle mass. And they're like, I know several doctors, they will not prescribe a GLP-1 agonist unless the person agrees to do a strength training program. They just
That's
won't,
great.
right? And then
Yeah.
they're starting off with these mega doses. You have somebody that's eating like garbage, right? And probably binge eating, and their diet is horrible, and they're deficient in every, most people that are smart will do like a minimal balancing program first, get people going in the right direction. Where the GLP comes in handy is for people that are in big trouble as far as sticking to the plan. They microdose it, and it takes the edge off enough so that they can stick to the habit change plan. And they use a
Let's
very small
explain that
dose
and unpack that.
as far as
Well, it's a really interesting concept that I don't think people necessarily grasp. So much of what you and I do is actually about understanding what's going on in someone's head, because what's
right.
between their ears is making all the decisions. And how
Well, and
many
here's
people
the thing
do
too.
yeah,
A lot of people that go on these GLPs and they jump on big doses end up going suicidal
you
because
don't say.
if you take a so you have a food addict or you
Hmm,
have a drug addict or a porn addict and you take away their addiction. If you've been coping by overeating tasty food your entire life, and all of a sudden, I've read tons about this by people that struggle with suicide because just imagine your entire life you've eaten comfort foods, and then all of a sudden you took this big bolus of GLP, and now you can't. How? What are you going to do? Like, oh my god, it's like taking away, it's like taking somebody off benzos cold
wow.
turkey. Like from a psychological perspective, or if like you have somebody who smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and you take those 2 packs of cigarettes away, you don't give them anything. Like, what's that going to do to that person? So a lot of people don't think about that, right? And then, what do you do with somebody who's insulin resistant and then you just turn up the insulin and their body just produces more of it? That's not going to end well in the long run, right? And so all these things that the GLP does can be walking will increase insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. It'll lower insulin after you eat, but
Mhm.
people don't want to do the basics. Um, and then the people that are really having success with this stuff are also putting people on hormone replacement so that they have the resources to actually be healthy. Because what happens if you take someone who's totally crushed, insulin resistant, inflamed, and then you basically cut their calories to nothing, and don't provide the support and the nutrition that they need, you're just going to end up with somebody that weighs less, but they're going to be just as broken or even more broken.
Absolutely. The thing you said that I wanted to unpack is that, there's you've described this to me, and we both know that a lot of people's decisions is because are made because there's a little voice in their head that won't shut
Hmm.
off.
Correct.
Whether we're talking about food, we're talking about
Hmm.
porn, we're talking about anything that you can be addicted to that has effects on this dopaminergic
Sure.
axis that drives, addictive behavior. And one of the fascinating things that you brought to my attention about these GLP-1 agonists is that they have this, I can't remember if it's a direct or an indirect effect or a first or second order effect on how the brain operates so that it can quiet that little voice. And I think
Right.
that element of coaching people, treating patients is fascinating. It's challenging, and a lot of that has to do with something we are going to be tackling in my podcast over at Substack, stillmanmd.substack.com. In this book, which is by my mentor, Dr. Richard Brook, or not doctor, he's not a doctor, Richard Brook. This book, Mach 2 with Your Hair on Fire, which is about how to master self motivation and stay on fire for life, is going to be really fun. We're going to be covering that in September, and I'll be interviewing him about it. But a lot of this is about the story people are telling themselves, and they're telling themselves a story of, I'm addicted to this. I can't give it up. I need this thing to make this progress. When a lot of it is, there's so much more work that needs to be done to get the result that people truly want. And one thing that's really fascinates me is that I think people they have these negative feelings about themselves, these negative feelings about their self image that drive them to do things that ultimately don't work out well. You know, the problem with them is not their weight, it's not how they look, it's not even how they feel physically. It's, I don't feel good about myself. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to take charge of my diet and really eat well. I'm not going to cut out these unhealthy habits. I'm not going to give up my 2 or 3 mixed drinks a night. I'm not going to make it to the gym consistently. I'm not going to lose my friends who are really toxic and sick and dysfunctional and refuse to change and who mock and make fun of me when I try to change, or family or whoever. I'm going to instead do something that will change how I look, but long term leaves me feeling just as bad about myself, because what ends up happening is you end up becoming weaker. You wind up with health problems because you calorie restricted on top of the GLP-1 agonist, and you lost the muscle mass and you lost the bone mass. And now you're 65 and you just broke a hip, which is young for a hip fracture. And that's where getting into this mindset piece is critical, and understanding the mind body medicine approach is critical. And I see a lot of patients coming to us who've said, I went to all these doctors, I did all these things, tried all these protocols, did all these biohacks, and they didn't work for me. They worked for other people. I saw them work. There's no doubt that they have effect, but they didn't work for me. And a big part of why they didn't work for people, or a lot of people, is the story in their head is, I don't deserve to look that way. And once you look that way, by forcing your body to look that way with a GLP-1 agonist, all of a sudden what's happening is you're setting yourself up for that next moment of, I don't deserve to be healthy, with the hip fracture and the weakness and the inability to perform in the gym because you've no longer got the muscle mass that the GLP-1 agonist caused you to burn to make the number on the scale what you thought it should be.
Well, and a lot of it too is medicating yourself, right?
Mhm.
And the people that they don't go to the gym, then you'll have the opposite extreme where you have the people that go to the gym and they'll punish themselves because they don't like themselves.
Yes.
And a lot of people, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, and I certainly struggle with this, I struggled with this for a long time, and I'm doing better. But if I have that 5 Series BMW, I'll be happy. Or if I get that, if I sleep with that hot girl, or if I marry this girl, I'll be happy. Or if I lose 10 pounds, I'll be happy. Then what happens? You lose 10 pounds and you're still just as miserable as possible as ever. If I get plastic surgery, I'm going to be happy. And then you get the plastic surgery and you're just as miserable as ever. For a couple weeks, you're okay. And then you're like, oh man, I've got these bags under my eyes, because you don't like yourself at all. And you're constantly looking outside yourself to, whether it's, drugs or sex or whatever it
Food.
is, your food, you're getting this stuff to comfort yourself, to make yourself feel better because you don't like who you are. Right. And it's like, well, man, it's so hard, if I just lost 20 pounds, I'd like who I am. And then that happens. And very rarely is it the case. You have to be happy with yourself inside of you. You have to like who you are. And then the rest of it kind of takes care of itself. But these are all band-aid solutions to the overall problem of one, what our society has created is this over-consuming um, culture that never shuts off and is always, we need a bigger house, we need more cars, we need more stuff, like we need fancier, we need more things, and it's coming down here too. Like if you go into the capital of Managua, you'll see the people that have the bigger cars, the nicer homes that never go outside. You'll see the morbidly obese in those people. You won't see it out here where I live, where people are happy if they have a motorcycle and some chickens, right? um so a lot of this is Western society is telling people that a person, place, or thing or activity will make you happy. And I got news for you. They won't. They
Right.
will not make you happy. Now, there's
And this
nothing
is
wrong with
why
going after some of these things, but if you base your entire self-worth on those things, you're finished. You're going to be in trouble.
absolutely. And this is why the foundation for us when we work with people, take care of people, help people achieve their goals is number one, let's clarify what the goal should be, right? And so often people come to us and say, well, I'd like to lose weight. And I say, well, hang on a minute. Let's clarify what you really want. Do you want to lose 2 dress sizes? Would you like to fit into a pair of pants that you bought when you were 18? Would you like to be able to fit into your wedding dress again? That is not actually the same as losing weight because as you've shown many times, people can gain weight because muscle and bone are more dense than fat and lose dress sizes or belt loops. And that's really important because if you understand that concept, then you understand that what you're not chasing is weight loss. What's being sold to people is weight loss because it's easy for them to conceive and to understand, and it's hyped up, and it's one of the most searched things on the internet. But it isn't the thing that people are actually after. So we clarify the goal, and then we come up with a plan to actually make that happen, which is why we've got coaching programs at stillmanwellness.com where you can learn from Jim and I how to do these things. We've got courses, we've got all kinds of cool things. I've got a bunch of things I created over the weekend, what I'm calling some cheat sheets that I'm looking forward to getting Jim and the rest of the team's feedback on this week. We have all kinds of things in there. For $1 a day, you can support us making content like this to help people explain what it really fundamentally means to be healthy and well. And then at the medical practice is where we help people really dial in based on labs, supplements, real hard data. But whether you're in the coaching program or you're a patient in the medical practice, we see the same thing. We have to clarify the goal, and then we have to come up with a plan. And the plan always includes all the fundamentals that people are not getting when they just reach for semaglutide. And again, it's not that the semaglutide can't be part of the solution, it can be. But the reality is that so many of the things that people are reaching for semaglutide to do, from controlling their urges, controlling their thoughts, having a better relationship with themselves, those things at a fundamental level are not being fixed by any drug. They're but you can move the needle on them with various things that we coach people through as options for getting to where they want to be. And obviously that has to be tailored to the individual, which is why people come to us, they've listened to so many podcasts, they've watched so many YouTube videos, they've read books and articles, and it's almost like the more they know, the more I know they haven't done the fundamentals because they've been so busy learning everything about what might work if it was part of a cohesive plan, but falls apart when it is only part of a sort of haphazard approach, which, I see it. I see it at least every month, uh, all the time across the course of the year, people coming in who know a lot, but they don't really know what works, and they haven't had the consistency to get the outcomes that they've been chasing.
Well, a lot of it is people just don't really focus on improving overall health, because when you
Yes.
improve overall health, you're going to improve your mental health. You're going to improve your ability to be present. When everything's working the way it's supposed to, you're sleeping well, you're doing all these things well, the chances of you having to medicate yourself are much less. And then when you do break down, we had a question on a Q&A last week, is like, what happens when you just don't feel like, you just want to put your hands up in the air and say F it? And I'm just like, when that happens to me, sometimes I just do it. I'm just like, F it. I'm good for a day or two. I'm gonna kick my heels up. I'm gonna do things that I usually don't do. And then I have the presence of mind to like be like, that's enough. That didn't really do anything for me. It's not worth it. But some people, they have one Snickers bar and it turns into like 30 Snickers bars over the next, 30 days, right? So you have to be aware enough to know that you're like Jordan Peterson talks about his clients, that the best thing they could be was broke, because every time they got a check from the government, it went up their nose and it just completely destroyed their life. And he's like, "These the worst thing you could
Absolutely.
do for these people was give them money, right?" So you have to know your personality type. Like some people, they have one candy bar and it turns into a 6-month bender. I can have a couple bad meals and just roll right back into what I'm doing. I do that every once in a while, and I'm totally good with that. But, a lot of this is we have to improve our environment. We have to improve our overall health. And the system is designed to do the opposite of that. And, I've heard people say, like, they're talking about, the actual American Medical Association is talking about how we need to put all children on GLP-1 agonists, just like there should be statins in your water. So this is going to
Wow.
turn into like
I had not heard that.
everybody needs to. Yes, they're talking about the American, I think it was American Medical. So there, I might be wrong on that, but there's a couple of different medical foundations, and are talking about the future of everyone being on these drugs. And then you've got, fitness experts on the internet, people that are influencers, saying in 10 years, you won't have to exercise, because the next GLP that's coming out is going to be anti-catabolic. It's going to help you build muscle without even working out. Right. So they're like,
Wow.
as this CRISPR tech. So we've got this like kind of, we're going to hack the human body movement going on. And it's always been like that. People want the path of
Sure.
least resistance. But what are the side effects when you start like, okay, you don't need to exercise anymore. We can do that in a pill. I guarantee you there's going to be side effects that come with that. There's no free lunch in
Right.
nature. Right.
And the
So
other piece of that, right, is that a lot of these effects are not seen for years. So you take a GLP-1 agonist today, you ruin some bone and muscle mass. You don't notice it because you're 35, 45, you're relatively young. You've got
right.
good levels of hormones still circulating. If not optimal, then at least they're hanging in there. But you get to 55, 60, if you just lost 10% of your bone mass because of poor diet and lifestyle over the course of your life, you could be looking at a serious fracture, hip, femur, long bone fracture, let alone spinal
Yeah.
fractures, all kinds of other ugly things. You could be looking at that years earlier, right, than other people. And what I think a lot of people don't appreciate, because they don't spend a lot of time around older people as they get older, and people who are older will tell me this all the time. They'll say, getting old is not easy. And if you've wrecked even a small proportion of your muscle or bone mass earlier in life because of how you chose to live, medications you may have taken, diet and lifestyle choices you may have made, coming back from that later requires exponentially more effort. And you may wake up to the problems that you created under the hood, so to speak, only when the chickens have really come home to roost and you're sitting in that hospital bed and your hip has been fractured and you can't even get up to go to the bathroom. You have to wait and have the nurse and the nurse's aide come to the bedside and help you get up on the commode. And if you don't want to experience what that's like, take what Jim and I teach you seriously, because we help people avoid exactly those outcomes with diet and lifestyle. And we're passionate about it because, how many sick, old, osteoporotic, broken people did I round on in the years of taking care of people in the hospital because they didn't bother to get great preventative medical care wherever they were, which doesn't have to cost a fortune. It can be very reasonable if you know what to do. And that's a lot of what we do in the coaching programs. We don't offer medical care in the coaching programs. We help people with the diet and lifestyle pieces that doctors are not sharing with them because of the way that the healthcare system is set up. And then in the medical practice, obviously, we do order labs, we do get bioidentical hormones, we do all those things. And that's, how we get people well and keep them there.
Well, this stuff takes time and it takes work, and
And
most people
consistency.
don't wanna do that. So it's much easier, and they did this with fen-phen too, right? And they did it with ephedra. We're
Hmm.
just gonna give you a we're just gonna give you a fat burner, or look at the potato chips. Remember the, Olestra? Was it Olestra? Do you remember that?
Yes.
They
Yeah, that
put
was a
they put that stuff in the potato chips that basically would block the absorption of fat in your
yes.
intestines, and you'd basically sit on the toilet and have, like, an atomic explosion. Um, like, they keep trying just to take shortcuts, like, okay, we're gonna take all the fat out of food and we're gonna replace it with sugar. Like, that was when I was in the 80s, it was like everything was fat free, right?
Hmm.
That was the solution. So they're
Right.
constantly looking for these, like, quick fixes to problems, and most of the times the quick fixes actually create more problems. And really, with any drug, the less you need to take of it, the better, because with a lot of these drugs, we don't know what's the side effect of taking a drug for 30, 40, 50, 60
Right.
years. Some drugs we have a lot of data on, like something like metformin, right? But the reason why people run into problems with long-term metformin use is they don't change their lifestyle, their dumpster fire lifestyle. The metformin overrides it to a certain point, and then the metformin can't override the horrible lifestyle anymore. And the same thing with the GLPs. Like, if you microdose it for a short period of time just to help you change your habits, wonderful. But we don't know the side effects of staying on large doses of this for long periods of time. Like, the drug's only been out for 20 years, right? So, and there's different versions of them. So, with anything, whether it's TRT, hormone replacement, you want to change your lifestyle so that you don't have to take massive amounts of drugs to get yourself in a better place. The less drugs you take, the better. And these are all tools, right? And the trade-offs are much more in your favor if you're doing the things you need to do to be healthier overall, and then you only have to take a little bit from time to time, as opposed to, like, these big doses.
Absolutely. I agree. Any
So,
other thoughts on all this, Jim?
no, I mean, other than the fact that it's just really sad that human nature in the West, anyways. I mean, you look at traditional cultures like the Native American Indians, the non-Western culture, Western culture. Obviously, I'm Northern European, so I'm talking about my own culture. We have this tendency, instead of working with nature, we dominate it. That's where most of the
Yes.
non-Western countries, they tended to work with nature. Like, the Native Americans would work with nature, and I find it really sad that that mindset still partakes us today. Like, okay, we're going to grow massive amounts of food by dumping, these chemical fertilizers in the soil, which might
Right.
work for short periods of time, but over the course of decades, you end up with food that doesn't have any nutrition in it, and the soil that's essentially dead,
And so
right? We
ironically,
don't
we
think
have
about the long.
so much
Go ahead.
food that we're spending money on drugs that will prevent us from eating it. I mean, if you were to go back in time
Correct.
2 or 300 years and tell people what we would be doing in 2 or 300 years, they would
I
be
know.
like, "What
I
happens?
know.
How
I
weird
know.
does this get? How is that
Yeah.
even possible?" I mean, telling them this, it would be
Tell
like
somebody,
it would
yeah,
be
tell
science
somebody in the
fiction,
Great
really.
Depression that 100 years from now, people would be taking drugs because they couldn't stop eating. And they'd be like, "Oh, like, really? That sounds amazing. Like, send me there." It's like, so
Oh,
we've
man.
created, instead of thinking about, like, hey, how do we design a life that actually complements our biology,
Right.
instead of just completely annihilating it. And you get into the rabbit holes then of that a lot of this stuff is being done on purpose because it's really
Mhm.
easy to control people that way.
Well, on the
So
something you said
yeah,
earlier, Jim, that I thought was interesting. You said it's sad that people, I think, like, something along the lines of, it's sad that people want this or don't want to do it the right way, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing. But it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone going in for anything that they don't need thinks, I'm doing this because I'm doing it the wrong way. And I know I'm doing it the wrong way. Some of them, I'm sure they cognitively or consciously are aware of that. And there's a real interesting self-destructive, self-hating mindset there that needs to be unpacked and discussed. But
Mhm.
most of them, they don't know any better and they don't do any better. And why don't they know any better? Because they haven't heard. And if they heard it, it wasn't compelling enough to get them to change the map that they're navigating the world by. And so, really, what we really do on social media is try to help people understand, what have you been sold on that really isn't serving you? And
Mhm.
what have you missed, ignored, or not been taught that's actually going to really make a profound difference in your life, but that you haven't heard about because it's free or affordable or just somebody hasn't monetized it yet? Light therapy is a fascinating example of that, where no one talked about light therapy for a long time because no one could monetize it. But now light therapy is this incredible cutting edge biohacking thing with $100,000 light beds, and now people are starting, because that industry's taken off, to go back and say, well, wait a minute, how good is the sun? So it's all about grappling with, wrestling with the deepest, darkest parts of human nature to help people become the best versions of themselves, which is really what this is about.
Well, and that's what it comes down to. Humans are destined to take the path of least resistance, right?
They're
Everything from our
tempted to.
strategies that our body uses to function, your body's always going to go with what's easiest, right? It's just kind of human nature. And
Right.
so if you present somebody with, hey, I can basically lose weight if I just take this shot like once a week. I don't really have to do anything else. Um, all I got to do is take this pill. It's a really tempting proposition for people, right? Or, if I take this pill, my knee pain will go away. Well, don't tell me, I just don't want to hear about the fact that it'll destroy my liver in 5 years or 10 years, right?
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
my knee pain goes away when I take this pill. So instead of actually, you know, doing some things that improve my health, just going to take this pill or I'm going to do whatever. Um, it's the same in the exercise field, like the exercise space. Like all you need to do is come do these 3 high intensity classes a week, and the rest of the time, it doesn't matter what you do. These classes will make up for it. That's the mindset that a lot of people have. And unfortunately, 3 exercise sessions a week, I don't care what intensity, is not going to make up for the fact that you're sedentary and, you treat your body like an ashtray the rest of the week, you don't
Absolutely.
sleep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So make
And
sure
on
you
that,
like and share this. Please subscribe.
yes,
Obviously we don't get what we call promoted very much. Although our vitamin D and magnesium live from last week did very, very well. So thank you for watching that. Um, got quite a lot of views on that one. So, and
yes,
we would love to get your feedback on what you'd like us to cover. This week, we're going to, on Thursday, if you're on our email list, just go to stillmanwellness.com. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page, put your email in. And we only send out like 2 emails a week right now,
that's
basically
right.
just informative emails. Sometimes we have sales cycles where we're selling certain programs where we might email you a little bit more, but we're we don't really want to spam your email. So um,
We really don't want to
basic,
spam your email.
no, we don't. We don't. We're very, we don't like that.
We
So we
honor
don't
the
like.
fact that you're trusting us with access to your inbox.
Correct. This week's topic on Thursday, if you're on the email list, you'll get the link on Wednesday, is we're going to talk about, the strategies for long-term body composition or weight loss.
Mhm.
Um, if
That
your
actually
goals are even,
work.
if your goals are, yeah, that actually work. And if your goals are even reasonable, because a lot of people will be well, I want to lose weight. And they'll be like, I want to look like this Instagram influencer. And it's like, okay, one, do you even have the genetics to
Hold on,
look
Jim.
like
Hold
that?
on, Jim.
One.
I've got
Yeah.
the solution to this problem.
Yeah.
It's called ready. You ready for it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called
I'm ready.
Photoshop.
Yeah. That one, they're photoshopping. They're photoshopping at one, right? If it's insane how many people are using filters and photoshopping.
Right.
If you're single, you'll find this out if you use any of the dating apps. You'll be like looking around, you'll go into the restaurant, you're looking around, looking for the person, and they're like on the phone, they're like, I'm right here. And you're looking around and they wave and you're like, whoa, okay. False advertising. But Dr. Stillman doesn't have to worry about that anymore. He's married.
Dr. Stillman's
But a
taken
lot of
now.
people will have a lot of people will have unrealistic expectations that most people, because of social media, they have no idea what a normal human is supposed to look like, right? And they
Yes.
don't realize like having six-pack abs and things like that isn't really what we call normal for most people.
No, it's
And the
not
amount of
normal.
work that you have to do to be there is a ton. So making sure that your goals are reasonable. And if they're unreasonable, knowing that it's only sustainable for short periods of time and that you can't be unreasonable for long periods of time without consequences. So
That's
but
right.
that's what we're going to be talking about on Thursday.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a
It's always
blast.
a lot of fun. But if you guys have any topic suggestions, please let me know.
Drop them in the
I'm
comments.
sorry to those of you on Instagram. It's hard for me to follow the chat on Instagram. So I don't know if anybody's asked me questions or anything, but thank you
And
for
on that note,
watching.
thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great day. Don't forget to get outside and send this to all your friends who are on semaglutide to make them think
No,
a little
no,
harder
don't
about
do
what they're
that.
doing.
Don't do that.
Yes. Yes. Do it.
Don't do